Hello, my name is Sarah Grace Taylor. I cover city and county government for the Times Free Press, and I'm here with DeAndre Anderson, who's running for District 8. DeAndre, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? Tell us why you're qualified for this seat and what your highest priorities would be.
Absolutely. So my name is DeAndre Anderson, like you just said. I'm running for City Council for District 8. And the reason I'm kind of running and I feel qualified is just because of the work that I've put in um, throughout my entire life. You know, I am 22 years old, so that I'm not going to be naive to think that I will have so many things accomplished. But with me working on the Student Advisory Council with the superintendent and sitting on the school board, that's kind of where I got my foot into the door of local government and realized that I had an interest in that. So from there, I ran for school board. That didn't happen, but I'm fortunate that that didn't happen because I was able to continue to build relationships and other doors were to open, which led me ultimately where we are today with running for city council. With my military experience, being able to communicate with all kinds of types of people, I think it was just time for a representative that was going to put the people over politics. I mean, we have substantial issues and pressing issues that run very deep back to early days. And I just think it's time for a representative that's going to come in and that their sole focus is going to be on fixing those issues. So what are those? Some of those are equitable housing, making sure that we're having affordable and quality housing for our constituents, sustainable neighborhoods, making sure our constituents feel safe. I think that one of the things that I would love to do is to start to hold the police department accountable by having more open and honest conversations between the police department and our constituents so we can move forward. I definitely think that it's time for us to do some reform, but also to move forward with that reform. And then economic development. We're in the middle of a pandemic. It dawned on me the other day that we're living in a pandemic. Like we're doing it. And I'm like, how? But with the small businesses, we are starting to see some of them go away. So I want to be able to help keep them sustainable, make our city more equitable. I think it's time for us to have more small businesses ran by people of color and Black and brown individuals. I think it's time for us to make it more accessible for all of our citizens. And then lastly is talent retainment, making sure that again, we're equifying our city. We're starting to take on this new reputation of an outdoor city. So what are we doing to make sure that we're taking care of those green spaces? What are we doing to get our younger generations out there and experience with this so we can create more avenues for them? So those are some of the more pressing things that I have on my key issues of why I'm running.
Got it. So our first few questions will be about the city budget. And the first question is, as we near a year since the virus hit Chattanooga, businesses and individuals within the city are struggling due to COVID-19. How would you provide aid to those businesses and families hit hardest by the pandemic's economic impact? And are there any programs in place that you'd want to keep, or what other programs would you add?
Absolutely, that's a great question. So for me, I definitely think that it's such a complex thing that we're going through. I mean, we've never gone through a pandemic and been in it in my lifetime. So it was one of those things where I'm definitely wanting to make sure we're keeping people at work, but we're doing it safe. We're making sure that we are supporting them. We're not saying, okay, well, let's get back to work, let's get back to normal, because people are losing their lives. And, we're starting to see the uphill battle for this. We're starting to get people vaccinated and things of that nature. So I think for me personally, it would be to continue to trust the people in positions, continue to trust science, continue to trust our health professionals, and then from there go back to the drawing board and figure out exactly where in that budget can we not cut, but take from to pour back into our community to help them stay sustainable. Yeah, that would probably be my approach with that.
Got it. Paving and transportation consistently rank at the top of citizens' top concerns, according to annual studies done by the city. What transportation or infrastructural goals would you have for your district if elected?
Absolutely. So I definitely would love to talk to each of my communities and talk with them about what they feel is important within their neighborhoods and create some kind of task force within District 8 to talk about transportation so we can meet, so we can see, all right, how are we growing and what do we need to do to grow? I'm didn't mention earlier, but I am in the Army National Guard. And one thing that we do with the military is AAR, so after action reports. And I definitely would love to see that in all aspects of city government if elected, because I think it's time for us to start seeing, okay, if we're going to increase budgets here, what what is happening. Like, can we let's go down this journey so we know when we do the budget process for the next proposal year that we know, okay, that didn't work. We gave $1 million and nothing changed. So we're going to cut from there. And I think that's going to hold so many people accountable to actually make sure that they're getting done what they say they are.
Got it. So a recent poll shows that a majority of District 8 residents surveyed consider economic development and job growth to be the city's top priority. Do you agree, and how would you address those concerns?
Yes, I do agree with that because if you look at just different parts of my district, it definitely needs to be revitalized. I was walking down the road with an older constituent and we were having a conversation. And again, it's no secret, I'm 22 years old. So he was kind of showing me where things used to be. It was like, oh, this used to be a barber shop, this used to be this. And it almost broke my heart because it's like, why aren't we revitalizing this? Why aren't we utilizing this to help our economic development, to help us grow? However, in order to get to that part, we need to work on our transportation. We need to make sure that we have more people to have access to get there. We have to start to figure out where is that going to go into our budget? How are we going to make sure that we're allowing these small businesses to stay sustainable? Because I do think that it is a fine line for us to intervene. And I think right now we should be intervening. We should be trying to figure out and partner with other resources to help our small business continue to grow. Because I think this is a perfect opportunity to show our community how strong small businesses can impact us. Because like Walmart's making money as if we weren't in a pandemic. They're probably making more money right now. So why don't we use that same energy to pour back into our small businesses? So I do agree with that.
Got it. So our next few questions are about business and the economy. The first question, city labor unions and many activists support a $15 minimum wage for city employees, which Mayor Burke had intended to implement prior to COVID-19. Do you support this or any other specific pay increase plans for city employees? Why or why not?
Absolutely. And this is the reason I support it because I came from a family with a single mom who had to work two jobs to take care of her boys. And I don't feel like in 2021 we should have families making $7.25, $8, $9 an hour to take care of their families. No one should have to work two full-time jobs to have a living wage. When so I think that that is something that we need to work on, and that is something that I vow to push for, just because I do think in order for us to get the best out of our community, out of our constituents, we have to start treating them like they're the best. Like firefighters, like some firefighters are making $10 an hour and they're risking their lives to take care of their community. Why are we paying them $10 an hour? And then we get upset when they go to Nashville or Atlanta or Memphis, where they're treated better in the grand scheme of things. So I definitely think that I would be a strong advocate for that, to be able to reach our potential within our city.
In 2019, 40% of Chattanooga's households were housing cost burdened, meaning that they pay 30% or more of their income um, towards housing, which makes them struggle to afford other necessities. How would you address affordable housing in your district?
Absolutely. So one of the things that we have been doing is we've been partnering with other organizations. So having some conversations with Chattanooga Neighborhood Enterprise and having conversations with other professionals that's kind of on their own that have a lot of information. And we've been going to the drawing board. So some of the things that we've realized is that, forgive me, I can't remember that law off the top of my head right now, but there's a law that prevents this, like the city from allowing the houses to be revitalized, to be like they're blighted and they just sit there. And we are realizing that our homeless population are using that as somewhere to stay, somewhere to live. And one place back in Kentucky, they turned some of their blighted homes into like, what's the word I'm looking for? Quality housing. Like, it's not something super fancy, but they turned that there for their homeless population and for their low income because they realized the need. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, when I looked at our report, we have close to 8,200 blighted homes just throughout the city. And it's like, why aren't we utilizing that? Why aren't we revitalizing? So I think that is the first step. The first step is definitely revitalizing. And I think to go forward is to teach people, younger people, how to do home ownership so they can be striving towards having their own. Because I definitely think, not to, crap on landlords, but we do have landlords that have some of my constituents living in very bad conditions. and don't fix it, but expect their payments to come on time every month. So I definitely think it's holding landlords accountable. It's going back to the drawing board and really figuring out what is the substantial problem and how are we going to use the funding that we're getting to fix this problem to actually start making fixes. Because right now, what I feel we've been doing is putting a band-aid over a broken bucket. The bucket's broken. We're just keep throwing these temporary fixes and it's just going to keep getting worse and worse. So I definitely think it's time for us to go back to the drawing board and really think about what are our priorities. If we see that housing is an issue, why aren't we taking these things to make change? Because we're having the funding. It's not that we don't have funding for it. We're just funding improperly.
Got it. So our next few questions will be about public safety. And the first question, last fall, Chattanooga shootings in Chattanooga were up by 20% from the same time in 2019 and higher than any time in the last 5 years. How would you work as a council member to lower crime in your district?
I would reinvest into our community. To build stronger communities, you have to have a unified community. And I definitely think, like I said earlier, us having more open and honest conversations with the police department and the constituents, I think that we're going to start seeing us move together in the same direction because there's no choice. There's no choice for the police department to not listen to the constituents. But we as constituents have to, what's the word I'm looking for? We have to be willing to go through this journey because it's going to be hard. We're going to hit roadblocks. And I think that that's the first step is just starting to have those conversations. I know there are some organizations in our community that's pushing a police oversight board. I'm all for that. I think that's a great thing to have just right now to hold them accountable. And some of the other things that I think that I would love to see is using our public servants to be with the police department. So having social workers, having counselors and things in that nature to be out with the police department to maybe minimize some of these problems that we're seeing.
Along those same lines, activists spent the summer protesting police brutality across the country and in Chattanooga, demanding defunding or divesting from police. Would you consider defunding or divesting from CPD as a form of reform? In what other ways, if any, would you consider law enforcement reform?
Absolutely. So I think definitely reinvesting. That's something that we've been talking a lot about with my campaign team. Taking some of the funding and putting it into better training, putting it into our community, because again, having a strong community helps lower crime. And one of those other things that I've been kind of speaking about in the early half of the campaign was a future readiness institute. I definitely think that if we input something with our police department to where in their training in the police academy where it's kind of like student teaching for teachers. You know, right before you become a teacher, you're student teaching, you're shadowing, you're there, your presence is felt, you're kind of going through all the motions, but you're not ultimately responsible. So I think it would be great to have police in the communities and they're not armed, they're solely there for their presence so people can start to build trust with them, build relationships. Because I think if you look anywhere online, a lot of traffic stops that are very minor, whether it's a tail light or you're speeding, it shouldn't result to someone being killed. It should be taken care of right then and there. And in my mind, I'm thinking if I got pulled over by Officer Sarah, and I'm like, oh, I remember you. You were in the Future Readiness Institute, and you have some kind of familiarity with me. I definitely think that that will help stop so much of this injustices that we've been seeing from George Floyd to Mike Brown. I think that would cut that out a little bit. And if that doesn't work, I'm always willing to go back to the drawing board. But that's just a solution that I think that we should try at least.
A big part of the public input this summer during those protests was input to city council. Do you support current city council restrictions on public input during meetings, or would you change these policies or make any other efforts to encourage public input?
Absolutely. I definitely would like to see a little bit more structure when it comes to the public input because I would love to see the public have their segment at city council meetings where we're solely there to listen to them and give it a lot of time. I know when I was sitting on the school board, we would have that at the first 15-30 minutes. Then they changed it to only having the top three. Then it was always changing. But I would love to see it to where maybe if at the beginning of the meeting, we dedicate the first hour to listening to concerns and from the constituents, because I do think that what we're doing right now, allowing people to speak, is fine, but I would like to see it a little more structured to where the community know that they're heard and we want to hear them.
So the last few questions are just kind of miscellaneous. The first question is, have you received a COVID-19 vaccine? And if not, will you when it becomes available to you?
Yes, so I have not received the COVID-19 vaccine, but I am getting ready to receive it through the military. The military is starting to have a few people be able to get their shots, and I plan to go get one as soon as it's available. And I encourage people to as well. I think that's another thing that, at the Anderson campaign, I don't know how to refer back to it, but on my team, we have always encouraged that because we think that it's time for us to start listening to the professionals. And I think that in order for us to get out of this rut that we're in, we gotta give in a little bit. And I know a lot of people don't feel comfortable with vaccines. I personally, growing up, never got flu vaccines until I was an adult. So I get it. A lot of people have traditions they don't want to break. But if you want to hug your neighbor, if you want to see a stranger without a mask, like this is what we're gonna have to do. So I'm a strong advocate for that.
What should the relationship between the mayor and the city council look like? Will you cultivate relationships with the new administration?
You went out.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're fine.
What should the relationship between the mayor and city council look like? And how will you cultivate relationships with the new administration? You froze up there. Can you hear me?
Yeah. So you said, what does the relation look like, and how would I?
Okay, can you hear me now?
I hear you now. Yeah.
Okay, good. Sorry. What should the relationship between the mayor and city council look like? How will you cultivate relationships with the new administration?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it should look like uniformity. I think that what the mayor is doing should not look completely opposite to what city council is doing. I think that the more, what's that quote? We're more powerful together than we are divided. So I think that is one of those things where we can get the mayor on the same page as city council, especially where we are right now in society. We can make so many, I'm not going to say progressive changes, but we can make so much progress moving forward, because I think that, people are, with the decriminalization of marijuana, people are looking at Atlanta and people are looking at Nashville and seeing that like these are efforts that are being pushed in actually seceding. But I don't think a lot of people are understanding that a lot of problems that we are having that is stopping us from being able to put the energy there, Nashville and Atlanta are not having. They don't have the housing crisis that we're having. They're not having all these issues because they're starting to become on the same page. And I do think that once the new leadership on the city council is there and the new mayor has been elected, we can get on that page to start making those changes. But right now, I think we're a little too disfranchised, and I think we have a lot of um, a lot of people with their own agendas. I think if we can all come together and be on the same page moving forward, oh my goodness, it would be a beautiful thing. And a way to do that is to have open, honest conversations, be transparent, be okay with collaborating. One of the things that I've learned when I was in the military was that I'm not always right, and somebody might have a opinion or perception that I might not have. So it was one of those things where I would love to meet with the mayor weekly, bi-weekly, just to be able to continue to be in tune with one another. So when an issue does come up where we might not see eye to eye, it's not going to be like pulling teeth to compromise or to figure out a solution.
And the final question is, would you support public funding for a new Chattanooga Lookout Stadium?
I would like to look at the budget a little bit more and just kind of see what our like housing situation are, how our families, our communities are doing. But if everything is looking the way it should, I'm all for it.